Chapter 14. Putting the show in show business. People frequently ask me how I became a producer, and I tell them, Deborah did it, with a bottle of castor oil. Getting started in the business has always been difficult. When we came to LA from San Francisco, where I had been acting with the Children's Theater Company, 500 performances of Puss in Boots, with 300 saved dollars, we moved in with my parents and my brother into their 2-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of Beverly Hills. Deborah, me, and our baby daughter Melissa. Roy gave up his room for us and slept on the couch. A friend of my father's got me a job as an assistant theater manager at night, and during the day I looked for a real job. After the last show started, everyone went home except the projectionist and me. It was an old run-down house that seated 900. But most of the time it was practically empty. We used to joke about closing early when no one was there at all, but we were afraid the manager would make an unscheduled inspection. One night, I was locking up the candy counter when Orson Welles walked in, with a beautiful girl on his arm. I almost fainted, refused his offer to buy a ticket, unlocked the candy counter, and dumped as much candy as he could carry into his arms. Moby Dick was playing inside, and Orson had arrived just in time to view his one scene, for what must have been the umpteenth time. I kept the candy counter open until I was sure he had left. Later, I landed a job as a messenger at Columbia Pictures. That was entry-level in those days, messenger or mailroom clerk, for those who were lucky enough to know someone and had at least a college degree. Getting inside a studio was what counted, because then there were people to meet and things to learn as you moved through the ranks from job to job. For a short time, I worked at the studio during the day and the movie theater at night. Deborah and I got our own small apartment. I had been a switchboard operator in the film lab and a clerk in various departments, like transportation, for several months. Having left the night job, I was discouraged and fed up, ready to quit. But almost every day I had coffee with a plump and attractive secretary who worked for the studio's story editor. And with their help, having some ability but no experience or seniority, I learned the ropes. One day I was offered a job as a story analyst at 20th Century Fox, reading material and writing recommendations or rejections. I got the job by covering a bell for Endo one weekend when my mother laboriously typed up my synopsis and notes. I had a large office in the old writers' building, not designated for old writers, but an old building transported stone by stone from England and reassembled on the Fox lot. The building housed several names, and mine was on the wall directory with them. One was Roger Corman, who I used to see putting on the grass. I knew he went to Stanford, but I never worked up the nerve to approach him. My office had French doors opening to a small balcony. I worked quickly, covering manuscripts, screenplays, 800-page novels, so in the afternoons there was time to relax and enjoy tea with the other story analysts. I made $88.50 a week, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I learned the apocryphal story about the young analyst who was given a monstrous unpublished novel to cover, with a 1-page limit on coverage. She, had 1 line left on the page, and several chapters remaining. The rule was inviolate. Undaunted, the clever neophyte finished the page and the novel with Elan. After rape, war, and pillage, they wed. I was writing my own stuff too, and had moved to Warner Brothers, where before long I submitted a story to the studio's busy TV department. It was promptly stolen and produced. Should I ignore it? Should I say something and jeopardize my career? Fearlessly, foolishly, perhaps. I said something, several somethings, and was rewarded with a new position as associate producer on the popular TV series 77 Sunset Strip, with no screen credit, but a raise to $200 a week. My cup was truly running over. To the disappointment of thousands of tourists during its 8-year run, there was no actual 77 Sunset Strip. If there had been, it would have been located approximately in the middle of Union Station in downtown LA. Our actual location was on the Strip, in Hollywood, next door to Dean Martin's Dino's Restaurant, which appeared in many episodes, but the number was somewhere around 9,000. Now we're getting pretty close to the cast royal. My boss's name was Howie Hurwitz. He became a mentor, and with his wife, Harriet, virtually adopted us. They had 3 daughters, and by then, our second, Robin, had been added to our family, and Deborah was pregnant again. Howie later produced Banacek with George Peppard, and more important, Batman with Adam West and Burt Ward, an enormous if short-lived success, which was filled with celebrities who vied with each other for guest-starring roles. For a while, it was so popular, the network ran it twice a week, in prime time. My good friend and Robin's godfather, Bill D'Angelo, worked on Batman with Howie. I knew I was doing well with Sunset Strip, but Howie, ever the benevolent dictator, continued to withhold approval. Instead, he said that if Deborah had the new baby on his birthday, he would make me a producer. Here comes the cast royal part. Deborah was 3 weeks late, as usual, and the night before Howie's birthday, she drank a small bottle of castor oil and produced Susan early the next morning. I was late to work. Howie was steaming when I got there, but without a word, I placed the empty bottle on his desk. He picked it up, examined it, then read Deborah's note. I drink a toast to you on your birthday, a bottle of castor oil, and welcome you, Godfather, with a bouncing baby Goyle. Within a week, I was producer. I remained one for more than 30 years, thanks to Deborah. Howie and Harriet gave Susan a beautiful canopied crib and treated Deborah to a housekeeper for a month. Amy was skinny and mean and wonderful. She took care of Deb and the kids during the day and had supper waiting for me when I got home at night to relieve her. I could smell her collard greens 2 blocks away. When I complained, she'd grumble, "If there's one thing I can't stand, it's a cranky man." But it was impossible to ever be angry with her. Later, when Amy died, Deborah was the only white person at her funeral. I knew I'd arrived as a Warner Brothers producer when Howie's business manager, Sheldon Graff, started courting me. Unaware of my $200 a week salary, Sheldon looked a little like Ernie Kovacs, cigar and all. Ernie's wife, Eddie Adams, was in the maternity ward across the hall from Deborah when she had Robin. Sheldon advised many of the Warner Brothers execs right into bankruptcy, and himself into the pokey. But before the roof fell in, he was really something. With a couple of partners, he'd put together the first pay TV champion boxing match. It may have been Sonny Liston, Cassius Clay. Sheldon lived in a major hilltop house overlooking Encino, large enough for a pretty big canvas tent in the family room for his kids. One of his favorite pastimes was phoning from Washington, D.C., and having the actual operator announce, "I have a call for you from the White House." When the president was in L.A., Sheldon entertained off-duty Secret Service guys at a local watering hole. One of my high school buddies, Bill Little, had become a Secret Service agent, so we had something to talk about. Howie Hurwitz was very innovative. Long before 24, an Emmy Award-winning series this year, 40 years before, Howie and I produced an episode that took place in real time. Among his other imaginative ventures were The Silent Caper with no dialogue, just sound effects and music, and The Solo Caper, in which no one but Ephraim Zimbalist appeared. Each episode of Sunset Strip was a caper. That was part of the shtick. Once when Howie was out of town, I got the special effects guy to cover his entire office with phony cobwebs. Everything. Furniture, bookshelves, windows, even the replica 77 Sunset Strip sign hanging over his front office door. We all thought it was a funny idea, but when he got back, Howie wasn't amused. I think the joke backfired because he knew, but of course I didn't, that his tenure with the show was drawing to a close. Our daughter Susan's full name is Susan Holly Rogosin. When we named her, Holly was as close as we could get to Howie.